You were the blood, kissed by the phone. I was the wind in a beat, bent to the earth and stone. North of the pole, repelled and drawn, I wanted to fall where the bee, fall where the bee reborn. I tried to be brave, you tried to be strong. You said it was wise like a king, more like a fool all alone. I wanted to drown in the dust of the drought. I wanted in when you were out. 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 And so I ran, there's no one fire. I was the head and the lights, and the lamp fire up the glass. The way was dark, and I should pass. You were the first through and I was. You were the first through and I was. Tides always turn, dipping away. I was the wind and flight, dying to return someday. But I couldn't leave, nor could I stay. The living I used to say, the living I used to What's on to forward, forward, forward. I heard out even then the boys go with you with yours. Go with me with yours. Go with me with yours. Go with you with yours.
Good morning and welcome to Brighton Unitarians. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eleanor Chiari and I'm very lucky to be a regular visitor here in this beautiful chapel. For all those of you who do know me, thank you so much for having me again. It's always a joy to be here. So welcome to this sacred space on this rainy morning. To those who are joining online, hello and welcome wherever you're connecting from and whether you're watching us live or at a later time. We can't see you, but we feel your attentive presence with us, and I hope that some of the peace and energy of this place reaches you and brings you comfort wherever you may be. So today there are about 45 people in the chapel, and I think 3 dogs that I spotted. So whatever the state of your heart this morning, you're welcome here exactly as you are. So let's take a moment to arrive, and I invite you to bring your attention to the soles of your feet. And if you can, look down at your shoes, kind of scan your body from feet to shoulders. Look at what you're wearing. So consider your socks. How do they feel around your feet? And your shoes, are they tight? Do you like them? Whatever clothing covers your legs or your body, can you distinguish the textures of what you're wearing? Are you wearing a watch? Any kind of jewelry? Can you feel, is anything that you're wearing borrowed or a gift from someone else? Did anything that you're wearing bring you particular joy when you first saw it? And does anything that you're wearing have a particular meaning? Just think about it for a second. So now if you are here in the chapel, or if you're watching online with somebody else, turn to the person next to you and tell them about one of the things that you're wearing and how you came to have it. Wait a second though. So just don't do it yet. So if you don't want to do this, if you don't want to be spoken to, then just put your hand on your chest and close your eyes so the person next to you knows that you don't want to be addressed. And if you're alone online, if you want to just jot this down on a sheet of paper, but just turn to the other person and share just one little piece of information, something that you're wearing and its meaning. And if you've put zero thought in what you're wearing, that's also a story. So please, just go ahead and do it. Turn to whoever. I do. I put it under there.
Oh, you
Yeah, I have it. It's hidden.
Because I know.
I know. Yeah, I've got the bad voice. Yeah, it's the voice I wish I had. Sorry. I would like to invite Penny to light our chalice for us today, as Unitarian congregations do across the world. Thank you, Penny. Thank you. Thank you. A candle is an object, and its wick a piece of string lit by the sulfur of a match. Lighting this ordinary thing is an act of memory. It reminds us of all the gatherings that came before here in this chapel and in every Unitarian gathering since our ancestors risked their lives for their faith. It is an act of imagination, where we name the light and move it towards justice or hope or prayer or whatever is closest to our heart that week. By placing our shared attention on this little flame, we come together as a congregation, and by our gesture, we bring more light to the world. May this light go forth making big shadows God can move in, and may we feel its little light within our hearts as we go forth. Amen. Objects are not just things. They can have deep meaning. They carry stories, sometimes across centuries and traditions. They can be personal and trigger strong emotions. They're fought over and can reveal conflicts and separations. Their disappearance can further trauma. They can also work as metaphors for people and places, as well as become tools for historical redress and transformation. Overall, we have too many of them. Our unstoppable consumption is a threat to our planet and to our well-being. At this time of Lent, when Christians remember Jesus' 40 days in the desert, removed from people, comfort, and things, this service will consider our relationship with objects and some spiritual lessons we may draw from exploring it. So the service is going to be divided into 3 parts. The first part, the Horniman Museum Walrus, spring cleaning the uncomfortable past with love and care for the future. Part 2, phones, our most intimate objects, mourning and melancholia in the digital era. And 3, imagine no possessions, in which I will guide you in a meditation inspired by the early Christian desert fathers. But let's begin by singing our first hymn, 13, from the Purple Book, Bring Flowers to Our Altar. And I just want to say that this is the very first hymn that Michael is playing for us in this chapel. So. Part 1, the Horniman Walrus. The Horniman Museum sits at the top of a hill on a heavily trafficked road in southeast London. With its arts and crafts clock tower and beautiful, accessible gardens, it is a beloved spot for picnics and outings. Opened in 1901, it contains over 350,000 objects from the Horniman family collection, a family that made its fortune out of tea in the 19th century. The museum contains an aquarium, an anthropological collection, an enormous collection of musical instruments from all over the world, a butterfly house, but it's best known for its natural history collection. For years, ever since my daughter was still in a sling attached to my body and my son barely 3, the kids and I spent hours running around that cathedral space devoted to outdated science. The children would point at the stuffed dodo, leaving marks on the glass with their small, greasy fingers. They'd giggle at the curled-up pangolins and in front of a disturbingly vivid array of decapitated dog heads. The stuffed victims of Victorian hunting sprees in the Amazon and the African plains stared back at us with beady and slightly crossed eyes, feathers and scales fading after more than a century of proximity to the South Circular. King of all the objects and most beloved was the walrus. Standing at almost 2 meters in height, it looked down on us like a big brown balloon. The man who stuffed him after he was hunted down in northern Canada had never seen a walrus and had no idea that they have folds in their skin, so he turned him into an overinflated monster, a giant with befuddled look on his distorted animal face. There was something charming about those old, outdated objects that drew me and my children and thousands of other locals, some now old people who still remember the collection unchanged since their own childhood, to return again and again to the Horniman. This month, however, we were invited to come and say goodbye to the walrus and to the old collection in its present form. After 123 years, the museum curators are doing something brave and bold, and in the eyes of many locals, horrible. They are spring cleaning the collection and giving it new meaning. The old, outdated science installations are going to be removed, and some of the same objects will be used to tell new stories about the history and practice of Victorian taxidermy, about species extinction, and about climate change. The walrus will return with a more elegant iceberg to perch on, but he will be in storage getting cleaned for 2 years, which is an eternity for small children who love him, while the entire space is being modernized. Why should this matter? Who cares about a stuffed walrus going into storage for 2 years, or about an outdated museum getting refurbished? My reasons for telling you about this are twofold. One, because this story is about attachment. My own, because of the memories of my children and their experience of wonder in that place. And also collective, because places like the Horniman have an imagined permanence, which is an illusion, but creates a sense of shared identity in local communities. When news of the collection changing broke, hundreds of people made a pilgrimage to say goodbye, photographing the old cabinets, knowing they won't ever be the same. Even the New York Times ran a story interviewing visitors who described themselves as heartbroken and gutted at the changes. And secondly, because this case also shows a way forward towards change as a renewal. Rather than letting the collections collapse under dust and bugs out of anxiety about change, the curators are going to use this existing collection in new ways while respecting the boundaries of the old wooden cabinets and the original room array. They're also going to add an element of awe. Every half an hour, the room will go dark, and children will be encouraged to lie on the floor while projections of leaves, waves, and moving stars will be cast onto the ceiling. The old collection and what it tells of a scientific mindset that saw delicate birds and rare species as objects to be seized and flaunted will be used to describe that very mindset, but now critically. And children will be gently encouraged to consider their own role in the future of the planet by being reminded of its beauty and fragility. The Horniman has been giving its existing collection of objects new meaning for a while, engaging with the difficult past. A few years ago, it completely changed its anthropological collection, and in 2022, in a ritual ceremony, it returned its Benin bronzes and other objects that had been looted by British soldiers in 1897 to Nigeria. It is amongst the first museums in the world to do this. A current exhibit about tea also includes a panel of apology acknowledging how the Horniman Pure Tea Company benefited from xenophobia and racism, how it profited from the work of endangered servants and colonized land, and how that colonial legacy still has repercussions on people today. Objects cannot fix the past, but they offer opportunities to name and acknowledge its hurt. They can offer bridges between times and mindsets now gone, but whose repercussions we carry with us into the present. And they can help us move towards a better future built on attention, inclusivity, and care. The way the Horniman is making use of its collections reminds me of a poem which argues for actively using the precious objects of the past. And I'd like to invite Joe, where are you? Yeah, to read it, please. I've got it here if you want. Yeah, that's
fine. This is called Our Jeopardy by Thomas John Carlyle. It's good to use best china, treasured dishes, the most genuine goblets, or the oldest lace tablecloth. There is a risk, of course, every time we use anything. or anyone shares an inmost mood or moment, or a fragile cup of revelation, but not to touch, not to handle, not to employ the available artifacts of being a human being. That is the quiet crash, the deadly catastrophe, when nothing is enjoyed or broken, or spoken or spilled, or stained or mended, when nothing is ever lived, loved, pored over, laughed over, wept over, lost or found.
So let's sing our second hymn, which is hymn 50. It has 5 verses, and we're going to skip the first one that's on the page. You start from the musical part, but let's skip the first of the page verses. Hopefully it will make sense. So it's God of every stone and pebble. So we'll do the one on this side, and then we'll just skip the first verse of the reading. God of every living creature. Part 2. Phones are most intimate objects, mourning and melancholia in the digital era. When my Italian grandmother died, the only object I inherited from her was a consumed deck of cards. But I remember my grandmother every year by placing the first conker of the season I find in my pocket. This gesture connects me with the superstitious, animistic thinking of Piemontese peasants who believed conkers could protect a common cold or other winter illnesses. Those were the beliefs that farmers still held in my grandmother's childhood in the early 20th century. She was born in 1905. By this time of year, my conker is usually all shriveled up, but I keep it in my pocket until it crumbles, and I feel its invisible care and the invisible care and protection that my grandmother and unnamed ancestors would have wished for me. I don't believe it protects me from the cold, but the fact that I lost it this year and now my voice is like this, I don't know. You never know. Memory can easily attach itself to small objects and gestures, and the first conker of the year is as precious to me as any piece of jewelry or valuable heirloom. But when I think about what my grandchildren might inherit from me, if I ever have any, I can see directly how the past century has altered humanity beyond recognition. Not only do I personally own, as a matter of course, an innumerable number of objects of mixed value that have become sentimental just by my having used them, but much more alarmingly, I will leave behind me, as most people in our time, an unbelievable digital archive. Our phones are increasingly our most intimate relations, and we leave within them so many traces of ourselves. In my case, all the services I've ever given, hundreds of hours of lessons, millions of emails, but also my voice and a photographic archive of almost every day that I have enjoyed or pretended to enjoy for the last 15 years. The study by the journal Big Data and Society, Big Data and Society, found that in the next 50 years, there will be more dead people than living people on Facebook. And there are significant ethical and moral questions about who will own this data and how companies may use it. Large sums of money are already being invested in what is called grief tech, as startups explore different ways to make people's digital footprints into tools for a digital afterlife. By uploading all the emails, text, voice memos, and photographs of a deceased loved one to a complex generative AI tool, grieving relatives are already able to chat to bots that resemble in minute detail the expressions, ideas, and sometimes video animations of their loved ones. I'm not talking about sci-fi. This already exists. There are several companies that do this. So you can text your deceased relatives and tell them, Johnny got a first in his exam, and the reply will be in the voice and in the style of your beloved. Now, this technological turn can seem grotesque and obscene, but who could resist one last conversation, even if imagined, with a lost loved one, especially if they died suddenly and we never got to say goodbye? In a 1917 essay called Mourning and Melancholia, Sigmund Freud argued that there are two kinds of grief following the death of a loved one. Mourning, which is the natural process of temporarily losing one's mind only to return to normal after a reasonable time, and melancholia, a state in which the self shatters with the death of a lost loved one, never to be whole again. The melancholic can no longer distinguish between themselves and their loss and live in a state of permanent grief where they can't let go of anything. Although this theory of grief has been discredited by psychologists, the idea of melancholia as a permanent state of longing for lost objects seems a useful metaphor for our time. I believe we're living in a time of chronic melancholia, in which voracious consumption of things matches a voracious hunger for preserving and documenting ourselves, our every living moment. But with this voracious consumption of content, ideas, symbols, and memory also comes amnesia. Amnesia from the excessive memories and representations. The one precious conker of meaning is lost in an avalanche of plastic waste. And it's not an accident that the word souvenir, which in French needs memory, no longer means a precious memory, but it means plastic junk. And catastrophic events are forgotten shortly after they happened, replaced by ever-accumulating catastrophes, so that comprehending the enormity of events unfolding in the present is harder and harder for us. This is a political problem, but it is also a spiritual and a moral problem, because people are not objects. They're not things that we can speak about in metaphorical terms. In the abhorrent, catastrophic, overwhelming context of contemporary warfare, media depictions increasingly become abstractions. Dead human beings are reduced to numbers and to the repetitive metaphor of squashed buildings, apartment blocks reduced to rubble, schools and mosques and infrastructure flattened like distorted dolls' houses. Now, empty symbols of death we can't understand, let alone mourn. Yet, Palestinians and Ukrainians also have their own digital footprints. Their private WhatsApp messages, voice memos, videos, and streams, preserve forever glimpses of the interior of homes that no longer exist, echoing with the voices of loved ones that have suddenly and violently been taken away. And in this time of distraction and paralysis, these intimate portraits, these ordinary digital objects of birthday parties, school events, work routine, and city spaces of cities that don't exist anymore, are frightful reminders that can jolt us into remembering a truth we should have kept close all along. That each of them is one of us, and that their loss, individual, fragile, unfathomable, is not something we can ignore, but must, with all our hearts, feel and respond to. Let's sing our third hymn, 78, In the Spring of Plough and Harrow. Part 3, Imagine No Possessions. In his 1971 and much overused anthem, Imagine, John Lennon asks us to imagine no possessions, but then immediately follows his invitation with the question, I wonder if you can. Things are such powerful metaphors, such seductive obsessions, and they dominate and organize the greater part of our lives, indeed, the very essence of so many of our thoughts. To imagine no possessions is to enter into silence, into the infinite vast space that rests beyond ego, beyond the world of ideas and the world of politics. It is to be truly alone, but also the space where humans are most likely to encounter divine beings. Angels, burning bushes, and the devil all appear out of the shadow of the world beyond things. In ancient myths, heroes would often start their adventures in the desert, and they often do so in modern ones too. Luke Skywalker begins his journey as a Jedi in the desert of Tatooine, for example, and Paul Atreides' adventures on the dunes of Arrakis are on every billboard at the moment. It is no accident that in so many world religions, the story of their faith leaders and their deeper encounter with God and with their spiritual mission begins in deserted places where they are fully alone. From the prophet Elijah to the Buddha to Jesus to the prophet Muhammad, withdrawing from the comforts of the world to fast and pray was essential to their finding enlightenment or preparing themselves to preach their truth to the world, or both. In the Christian tradition, this time of year commemorates the 40 days when Jesus was in the desert. And in the 3rd and 4th century, desert fathers were actually mothers too, but typical sexism makes them all fathers, took up Jesus' invitation to give away what they had, to lead an ascetic life in pursuit of God. At a certain point, the desert was so full of these ascetics that it was described as a city. Cynthia Cruz writes about the desert at that time in these words. The desert is Egypt, the land of Moses, of St. Catherine, and of the burning bush. The desert is the cathedral of fire, the place where all things come to life, where all things come to die. It is a place of pilgrimage, but it is also metaphor for the silence within, the searing white light of one's spirit. Those who can descend into the desert. Those who cannot or choose not to descend into the silence within themselves. So to try to reach that silence within, that space where all things come to life and all things come to die, I'm going to invite you to join me in sharing an extended period of silence, using a prayer adapted from the teaching of the Desert Fathers by the Benedictine monk John Main. It uses the Aramaic word Maranatha, which means come, O Lord, as a tool for letting go of all thoughts and to imagine and invite the divine in. If you don't like this theistic meditation, you can replace the word Maranatha with your own 4-syllable word if you have one. But I'm going to ask you to try it. This is a meditation that is used very often in the Meditatio Center in North London, and they usually recommend 20 minutes for this, but we're going to do a little less, probably more like 10. There will be music that will start at the end of it. So if you can let go of anything you don't need to be holding, bring your feet to the ground, feel the top of your head being pulled up by an invisible string, and if it feels comfortable, close your eyes, or you can keep them semi-closed. And then inside yourself, silently, begin to recite the word Maranatha. Ma-ra-na-tha. Say it with 4 equal syllables. Breathe normally and give your full attention to the word as you say it, silently, gently, faithfully, and above all, simply. The essence of meditation is simplicity. So stay with the same word during the whole meditation and try not to visualize the writing if you can. Just listen to the word as you say it. Let go of all thoughts, even good thoughts, images, and other words. Don't fight your distractions. Let them go by saying the word faithfully, gently, and attentively, and returning to it as soon as you realize you've stopped saying it or when your attention wanders. So let's begin. So ma-ra-na-tha.
Fa.
To go into this kind of silence, into this space beyond things and beyond words, is a small way to spring clean your mind. The Sanskrit poem, the Hanuman Chalisa, which has 40 verses and is a sort of rosary for Hindus, begins with these words: "With the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Gurudeva, I clean the mirror of my mind. With the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Gurudeva, I clean the mirror of my mind." I hope that you may use this Maranatha practice to clean the mirror of your mind anytime you wish to enter into that deeper silence, that sacred space beyond self and beyond experience, the desert space within, where God or presence or eternal consciousness is waiting for you. Let's sing hymn 21, Come and Find a Quiet Center. silence. Hold still. Listen. All that fluttering and flapping, and it was always here. Yes, here, under the heartbeat and the song and the longing. When you were busy smashing against the borders of your life, it was always here. A seed, a river, a pumping living heart. Hold still. Ancestors are reaching through your bones to move you somewhere else. If you stop, look, listen, it is safe to just let go. Go out into the world this morning, aware of all that you have, holding on to those you love, honoring those who have been lost, and feeling that vast empty space we will all return to someday. Amen. Notices.
Thank you, Eleanor, very much for leading our service today. And thank you, Michael, for the music, and Stuart for setting up, and Fiona for doing the teas and coffees. Not too much today, actually. There's no Heart and Soul this week. It's on the first and third Thursday of the month, so it'll be next week again. Friday lunchtime concert, there's a change to the programme. So it's going to be some piano music by somebody called John Brusen, who's been able to step in. You can find more information on the website. And then maybe, oh no, it won't be on the flyer, so you have to look at the website for more information on that. There'll be quiet reflection on Wednesday, starting at 12:30. First of all, so I couldn't have, it's first of all live piano, that's right, and then it's silence. Oh, thank you. Thank you. 12:15 music, and then, yeah, thank you. And then next Sunday, there'll be the irregular choir. So if you want to know more about that, then speak to Stuart, who's here, just here. That'll be after the refreshments, after the service. Next week, our service will be led by our minister, the Reverend Jennifer Sanders. And for those of you who maybe don't appreciate the sort of significance of that, is that Jennifer has recently gone on to the role of, what's it called, Jo? Anyway, she's passed everything, and she is a minister a little bit earlier than we thought. So that's really exciting. So do stay around for teas and